and we're going to head into our final part of the podcast today, Footballers' Lives.
Footballers' Lives.
Yes, time now to welcome our special guest. And first of all, an apology. We did try to get Scott McDonald to come on this week, but unfortunately Scott isn't available today. However, we have a fantastic replacement. The man who has become known as the Godfather of coaching in Australia. He started his playing career with Tottenham Hotspur all the way back in 1966, the year England won the World Cup, and later emigrated down under in 1974 after injuries took their toll to play for South Melbourne. After starting his coaching career a year later as state director in Victoria, he acted as assistant to Jimmy Shoulder for the Socceroos, and later he oversaw the football program at the famed AIS in Canberra. He's worked in Malaysia, in Iceland, and you might remember had a year in charge at Perth Glory, as well as various roles with the FFA, where he now returns to help Trevor Morgan in his new role as technical director. It is a real pleasure to welcome Ron Smudger Smith. How are you, Smudger?
I'm good, Simon, and thank you. Pleasure to be here. Hi, Spider.
How are you, Smudge?
Great to have you with us. Great to have you with us. Ron, before we talk about coaching, few will know about your playing career. Take us all the way back to those days in black and white where you were playing for Spurs. Were they your team as a kid?
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely. I grew up with Spurs pictures from as young as I can remember, and used to spend most of my school holidays watching them train and try and get the players to sign the photographs. So very much so. It was indoctrination from a very early age.
Come on, Smudge. Tell us honestly, there was no tiki-taka back then, was there? It was knock it in the channels, my son.
Well, to be honest with you, mate, there was no other way of playing football because there wasn't any grass on the pitch. People forget about this, you see. They just think that back then the pitches were like today. Well, the only bit of grass by January that was on the football pitch at White Hart Lane was where the corner kick was taken, in that little quadrant. The rest was just at night. The wetness used to shine. It used to look like it was being played on glass. So,
Smudger, take us
definitely
back
no
to,
tiki-taka.
in the 60s, who did you play with? Who were some of your peers at Tottenham at the time? Those would be the days of Bill Nicholson. Is that right?
Oh yeah, no, I was part of the only apprentices at Tottenham in those days were schoolboy internationals. Okay, and there were a couple of lads who were like me, who were kind of like what you call the casual trainers. Ray Bunkle was one. Ray Evans. Ray Bunkle finished up playing for London Schoolboys. Dave Mackay then later took him to Swindon. But Ray Evans actually played at right back. And he was probably him and Steve Perriman were the only two local lads who ever played for Tottenham in the first team for probably in a 10-year period.
Do you remember?
But Ray was there until Joe Kinnear kind of took his place. But Ray Evans was a lad from Edmonton, local lad.
Okay. Was it already in your head to become a coach when you emigrated to Australia in the 70s? And I presume you must have come across the legendary Eric Worthington pretty early on as well.
I did. I actually got interested in coaching when I went to college to become a teacher. And part of our course was to do an FA coaching course. Plus, one of our lecturers was a staff coach with the FA. And he was the first one who ever really made me think about what I did on the pitch. I mean, at Tottenham, we didn't get any coaching there. You judged how well you trained and played by how much abuse you got. So that was our kind of feedback mechanism. We'd all talk about it after training and so on and say, well, I did all right tonight. I only got, 2 minutes of abuse.
Brilliant. Smudge, on that though, but did in terms of your earlier playing careers, I know you had some injuries. So was that also something that then, I guess, changed the direction? You wanted to be involved in football, and therefore coaching became more important?
Not at the time, Craig. I mean, I knew I was not going to play professional football, but I was really into teaching and coaching, and I still love playing. but I had terrible knees and I was having surgery, and, you know, I had almost a 2-year period out the game before I came to live in Australia. But by then, I was kind of hooked on the coaching bit, but not to the exclusion. I wouldn't have given up playing football unless I had to.
Ron, you're best known, obviously, in Australia for your time at the AIS, where you helped develop many of the Socceroos that became later a part of the golden generation. Why was that program so good? What was its secret?
Well, at the time, it provided really talented young players with an opportunity, you know, to really develop to the best of their ability. The sky was the limit. And the other good thing about it was you're in an environment where it was okay to make mistakes as long as you learned from them. Nobody got abused, you know, for giving a goal away or things like that. In fact, we used to say to the boys, we know you're going to make mistakes doing what we're doing. Everyone makes mistakes playing out from the back. And that was something that we were adamant that we had to introduce back in the 80s to get players more comfortable on the ball. But you can't do that and then, you know, abuse somebody if they make mistakes and it costs you results and games. But they had to try and play under pressure.
Smudge,
sorry, Spides, on you go.
I'm going to put you on the spot right now. So we know that you've been a part of producing some of the greatest players that have played for Australia, but who was you most satisfying to see that you help him develop to have a career?
Oh,
tough question.
Yeah, that is a tough one. I'll tell you, I'll put one on. I'll give you Frank Farina.
Yep.
Because Frankie was a, you know, kid from Cairns. I saw him when I was still the coaching director in Queensland. He came down and played in a scores competition at Spencer Park, and I was looking for a striker. And I brought him down to be part of the coaching course. And I said to Jimmy Shoulder at the time, he just started as the head coach at the OS. I said, Jimmy, I've got 2 boys here. I said, one's at Brisbane City, and I won't say who that is. He was a good player. I said, and this other one, he's as green as grass and raw, but there's something about him that I like. And he's kicking coconuts around in Cairns. So if he goes back there, I said, that's the end of him. I said, you've got to take him to Canberra. And that was the start of it. And Jimmy agreed with me. And he said, well, the other boy in Brisbane's talented, but he's got opportunity there. So we'll give Frankie a chance. And Frankie always had in his head from day one, yeah, I want to play overseas. And everybody that saw Frankie play could see he was a bit raw-boned and everything else. And they talk about what he couldn't do rather than what he could do. And what he could do was score goals. So he's one definitely that I would say greatest satisfaction in seeing him, you know, actually get a career.
Brilliant.
Smudge, you speak about, even with Frank Farina there, about he wanted to go and play overseas. So, I mean, look, a lot of the players, obviously, in terms of the players that you identified back in the day, you knew also not only their physical attributes, but there was that desire to want to go and conquer the world, to play at that level. In regards to our talent identification now, Smudge, you know, it's probably changed a little bit. We speak a lot about the physical attributes and the capabilities to then play at the highest level.
Yeah.
How has talent identification changed now in Australia?
Well, we're actually going back. Clarkey, who works with Arnie, he's now profiling people and actually getting test data like we used to, you know, back in the, you know, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. What has changed, Craig, is the actual young player coming through is a different beast altogether to when, say, you know, your generation, because they've grown up with iPads and everything else. So the physical literacy is nothing like what it used to be. And unfortunately, we also had a spell, you know, for probably a good 10 years out of the last 15 to 18 years, where training, strength and conditioning has been frowned upon. And for me, that was the biggest backward step, because, you know, your generation that came through, we were doing strength and conditioning work, first and foremost, to prevent injury. Because if you're going to train 7, 8 to 10 times a week, your body's got to be able to sustain it. And so there was this training process over 12 to 24 months. So you could get the strength to increase the loading and everything else. But now I think we need it even more so because of the changes in society.
Ron,
we've done the regular testing. Sorry, Simon. We've done the regular testing as well, Smudge. Whereas again, that doesn't happen here at club level, and we need to get back to certainty. So I remember speaking to you. Players like Lucas Neal, Joe Simonich, Kevin Muscat. You knew that these players were going to have careers for themselves.
Yes. Well, what happened in the end, Craig? We started with a blank page, and Harry Wardle was the lead strength and conditioning coach for all of the sports. But Harry had a background in football, so he was also familiar with what was required. And he always said, you don't want to finish up looking like Charles Atlas or a bodybuilder, but you need your strength and you need your power. And so what we found was that through trying to prevent injury, we actually, through testing, found that the type of training we were doing made the quick players even quicker. And it doesn't work on people with the wrong muscle fibre. So the slower ones who really need it more, they're only going to get a smaller percentage increment in their speed. But the quickies used to get really quick.
Ron, we're moving into the present before we take in some Twitter questions. You're now back with the FFA with Trevor Morgan, your technical consultant, and you're also part of the starting 11. Can you just briefly explain basically what your brief is in both of those roles?
Well, it's to give advice and assessment and to support Trev in a number of areas, particularly with regards to the player development and looking at our pathways and also coach education, because they're all linked. It's not something that you can isolate. One impacts on the other enormously, and that's really it. So, because I've had a broad experience over quite a few decades, it's interesting to look back and say, well, that worked. We did this at that stage, and that was successful, and now we don't do it. So could we bring those things back in somehow, but in the current environment?
Okay, let's move on to some questions from our listeners. This one from Nick Ogle that came in via Facebook, which is our question of the week. Congratulations, Nick. You win a $100 voucher thanks to Outback Steakhouse. Nick says, Ron, I've got a boy going through the SAP program at the moment. Everything I read overseas talks about how good futsal is for development, but it doesn't seem to have the same sort of support in Australia yet. Does Ron or did Ron have the institute players playing futsal or small-sided games during this time there? And what are his thoughts on futsal for player development?
I think it's a good contributor, but I'd like it even more if it was played with a proper ball, like the outdoor game, because developing touch is difficult with a ball that doesn't bounce very much. It also encourages some bad habits of using the sole of the foot. But it also does a lot of other good things about playing in the tight. And with regards to small-sided games, and Craig will tell you, when in our indoor hall, that used to be like a breeding ground for everything. But playing in the tight,
Rocky's elbows, Smudge. Rocky's elbows.
Oh. Yeah, exactly. So we used to love it to rain. So I'd save the pitches and say, right, lads, we're in the indoor tonight, and that was it. So, but I'm a big fan of small-sided games, but also not exclusively. It has to be part of an overall training program. So yes, playing in the tight is a critical part of playing football, and playing indoor football. I think everybody that's played the game just loves that. But you need to also have the expansive stuff outside.
Smudge, tell me, who was the young player that most impressed you this year in the A-League, and who do you think can go on to have a career in Europe from what you've seen?
That's a Twitter question, by the way, from Tom Simon's fan. that Zelko has omitted to say, but the question is relevant.
I think the one who's impressed me most is, I can see his face and his name's just gone out of my head, but he's with Adelaide City.
United.
Adelaide United, the midfield player.
Riley McGree.
Riley McGree, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, he's
I
outstanding.
think Riley has got the goods. If you go back to what Craig was talking about the lads that would succeed overseas, there's no doubt in my mind that you've got to be able to meet the physical demands of the game. In fact, I know that. But he's not only is he a lefty, which is a big bonus, but he's got a good appetite for the game as well. I like him in the way he plays the game. He's got enthusiasm for it. You know, he's prepared to make runs and try and score goals and stuff like that. So I think he can improve his positioning off the ball. But you know, if I was going to sign somebody, yeah, I'd sign him.
This is a good one, Ron, from Nando Benning, again on Twitter. Does Ron agree with the current format of the national curriculum? And as a subsequent question, what age group is key for football development? This could take about half an hour, I think.
I'm just going to say, there's no short answer to this one. What I will say is this. I think you should forget about age, okay? Because I've seen some 9-year-olds that would leave 12 and 13-year-olds for dead in football ability. And so what you need is you need to give people challenges that suit their ability. And a quick example, as soon as a player has got the ability to take his eyes off the ball and start scanning, you can then start working with them about what they look for, where they look, and how they position themselves on the field, which is really important because you spend most of the game without the ball. And so that can happen at 9, or it might happen at 14. That's a development thing, and it's got no relationship to age.
Fascinating stuff. This one from Matt Doolan, again via Twitter, Ron. A-League academies were supposed to take over from the AIS in helping develop our most talented young players. What can these academies learn and replicate from your old AIS setup, and what are the biggest challenges they face, in your opinion?
Well, again, that's a long
So that's a loaded question.
Well, what I would say is this. It's a shame that we've had like the either or. I mean, the A-League academies have raised the standard of what's happening in club football with youth development, but how they run it and may be totally different to what we had at the AIS, where we had a specific age group, and they were developed with a constant input. There, you know, it wasn't, and it was with the individual in mind rather than playing in a system. And I think that's probably where we've gone a bit the other way in recent times. We've become more about systems than we have about actually helping players become the best they can at a young age.
You sort of answered the final question that I think we're going to ask there from John Zelenardo. If you were allowed to change one thing in Australian football, what would it be? Is that it?
No, actually, I think, you know, the idea of having an AIS reintroduced, I don't think that'll ever happen. But what I would like to see is that raising the standard at all club levels, A-League and NPL, but also going back to having at least at state level, the best with the best, and try and provide a top quality opportunity for maybe 16 to 20 kids in the state, rather than trying to do that for 150. That would be the one thing that I think we could get the maximum benefit out of.
Smudge, I just wanted to ask the question. I mean, look, we're speaking about obviously everything that you've done within the game, and I was somebody that had the opportunity and huge benefit from your coaching to give me an opportunity. What has been your best moment in football?
My best moment in football?
Might be a game, it might be a player. Like, what has been your best moment to date where you look back and go, you know what, that's a real standout for me?
It was when I was coaching in Malaysia. I took a team from the bottom of the league and didn't sign any players, and we won the league the next year.
Impressive.
And got in the final of the Malaysia Cup. And for me, that proved that it's not just about signing players. You can actually work with people, and it wasn't by choice. It was just that was the environment I was in at the time. I wanted to sign players, and the club said no. You've done such a good job with these. We're going to continue with these guys next season.
You're the victim of your own success, Smudger.
Well, I can remember saying, Alex Ferguson just won the league last year and he's already spent like 200 million quid. I said, we only just managed to avoid relegation. But anyway, so I think in terms of, pure coaching, working with people, that was probably the greatest highlight of my career. And it also stood me in stead. I got job offers for the next 20 years because of that.
And you're still robbing a living, Smudger. Good on you, buddy. Smudge,
Right.
tell me, you've been all over the world with football, mate. What is the most impressive stadium that you've ever been to? Because I think the viewers out there, they actually want to hear these kind of things. The most impressive football stadium that you've been to?
Well, the night I walked into the new Munich stadium with Frank Farina,
Allianz.
before the Confeds Cup was going to be played, this was, I think, about 6 months earlier. There'd been one game played in there, and Frankie and I went to see Bayern Munich play against Germany. And all of the teams that played for Germany that were in the Bayern team played for Bayern, and they played. And that stadium was just breathtaking to be in. From the moment, like, we actually drove into the stadium.
You can see it. You can see it off the motorway, Smudge. It's brilliant.
Oh, yeah, and it was changing colour. They could change the colour. It was red and blue that night because of the Bayern colours. And we drove in and we actually parked outside the VIP area, which was like on level 5 or something like that. And it was just a wonderful experience. And going in pre-game, it was full. The VIP area must have been about 70 metres across, all looking out, a wonderful view. And there was a who's who of German football. I was in there. I was like gaping. Oh, there's Gerd Muller. It was like a
kid in a candy shop.
Yeah. That was me. Yeah, there was all these players that I'd seen playing in World Cups, and you could go and shake hands with them. So that is a stadium. That was fantastic.
Ron, I don't know if you've been to the new White Hart Lane yet. Maybe that might outdo the Allianz Arena. I'm sure you're still cheering Spurs on, even though you're 71 years young. But it's been great to have you on. We could talk for hours about all things coaching and football. But we thank you so much for your time, Ron, especially at short notice. Cheers, Smudger.
No problem. No, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks,
Smudge. Congratulations on your role. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks a lot, Craig. Okay, no worries. Bye.
Bye.
And that is us for another week on Shim Spider and so much more. Our thanks to Streamgate and to Outback and to you for listening. Our podcasts have now hit the magical 5-figure mark and have been downloaded well over 10,500 times. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Until then, bye for now. Great stuff, guys.
That was a top show. That was actually good.
Good stuff.
That was actually good.